Will, we should do this in the morning, I warned him. Are you kidding? I didn't wake up in the dead of night to look over a bunch of boring journals. Let's go on an adventure, he said excitedly. The doors slid open and I desperately tried to think of another good excuse as to why we shouldn't do this. If something goes wrong, we could be stuck in here all night and Dad would tan our hides, I told him angrily. I think you're just chicken, he said, jabbing me in the ribs. I sighed and got in the elevator, realizing that I definitely didn't want him doing this alone. Then, I pressed for the 6th floor. So we pressed the 2nd floor next, right? Will asked. My heart was already racing, especially as we passed the 5th floor. I remembered the note's ominous warning. Listen, Will, you have to promise me something, I said, as the doors opened on the 6th, and we looked out towards the empty halls. Yeah? He responded, quickly pressing the button number 2. If we see someone, just don't say anything, okay? Don't acknowledge them, okay? I told him. Sure, he said with a giggle. He arrived at floor number 2 without incident. But my nerves were on edge. I'm serious, Will. We don't know why that man died, okay? I don't want anything to happen to us, I said, as I pressed for the 4th floor and added, if nothing happens, you have to promise me that you'll forget about this stupid game, deal? The elevator shook. We went to the 4th floor, and then 3. Now it was time to return to 6, I thought. The elevator paused on the 4th floor. For a minute, I held my breath. The doors opened, but there was no one there. Isn't this the ghost floor, sis? Will asked, just about to get off the elevator. Are you stupid? Stay on here, I ordered him. He laughed again and the doors closed shut. Jesus, you really are scared, aren't you? He said as we arrived at the 6th floor for the 2nd time. The doors opened and I looked down the hallway. Nothing. It's just really late. I don't like this, I told him. He laughed and leaned against the elevator wall. I think I could do this 100 times if you always made that face, he chuckled. The elevator shook and shimmied, and I sighed. Okay. Game's over, so can we go to bed now? I asked. The doors opened again, and he kept laughing until I noticed we were on the 7th floor, which was not the final destination in the sequence. I snatched him by the collar and held him back. Hold on. Did you press for the 7th floor? I asked. Will stopped laughing and yanked his shirt away from my hands. I thought you did. What does it matter? Let's take the stairs up, he remarked. And that's when we heard the knocking. I looked up to see if maybe I was just sleepy, but Will heard it too. There was nothing around, though. What the heck is that? Will asked as we walked out on the 7th floor. I kept close to my little brother. Something about this felt very wrong. The hotel hallway was eerily quiet, save for the occasional sound of the knocking. I'm sure it's someone playing a prank. We saw one of the guest doors slightly ajar, room 7K. As we passed it by, the knocking increased and Will got curious and pressed it open. I tried to stop him from stepping inside, but instead, I found myself following in after. Except the room was bare, and I don't mean just occupants. I mean, there was no furniture either, no windows. As we stood there for a moment, in the dim lighting, both of us heard the knocking again. It sounded like it came from the other side of the walls. Let's go back to our room, I said. Will nodded, and we left the bizarre room immediately. As we left, we heard the noise intensify and become louder. It put me on edge. We raced up the stairs, scared to our wits, until we made it to our floor and I caught my breath. When we got back to our room, neither of us said a word. It was best not to, because I don't think either of us really knew what to say about it. The next few days passed by, and I put the game and tourist out of my mind. I kept the notes under my inflatable bed, perhaps as a memento for the experience, but I had no intention of trying anything connected to the game again. Will seemed to have moved on too, becoming wrapped up in school, but it didn't last. Not long, anyway. It was sometime that same week when Dad needed a little help running the counter that we heard the same knocking again. I froze in place, trying to figure out if my mind was just playing tricks on me. Dad showed up and said someone had checked out, but I was so focused on the knocking. "Don't you hear that?" I whispered. "Well, don't just stand there, go clean the room," Dad told us, ignoring me. We already knew what room it was going to be. 7K. Except this time, when we entered, everything appeared normal. Furniture in place, windows where they should be. As I vacuumed and Will cleaned the bathroom, though, there was a tension in the air. An unspoken truth that neither of us wanted to confront. Something had happened while we played the elevator game, and neither of us understood what. Then, as we started to leave, Will came out of the bathroom and was crying softly, with the kind of tears that you make when you're guilty of something. "What's wrong?" I asked. "I didn't want to say anything because I knew you'd be mad," he admitted. I sighed and muttered, "Out with it. What is it?" I've been playing the game. Every night. Ever since what happened," Will admitted. My eyes widened and I glared at him. "I just wanted to know, if it would happen again. I'm sorry, he admitted. "Why the hell would you do that?" I asked. He wiped his tears away. I don't know what it was, but when we were here before, when things were different, I felt different too. I know you did too, because I see it on your face. I need to know how we did that," he said. "God, don't be an idiot. You could have gotten hurt, or worse, running around this hotel by yourself," I warned him. "No, Lindsay, stop denying it. We experienced something that night, and I think it's the start of something bigger," he insisted. Then he took a scrap of paper and muttered, "I went through some of the other journals. They had logs in them too. Sometimes they weren't always scratched out. I think that the sequence that we had is almost the correct one. If we figure out what the right one is, then what? Huh? We can get scared again? We meet a ghost? Grow up, Will," I argued. "Stop trying to pretend nothing happened," he shouted back, and then added, "I know it's real, and I'm gonna prove it." Then he ran to the elevator and pressed a button. "Will!" I chided him as I tried to follow after him, but it was too late. The doors were closing. I saw the bright buttons on the elevator telling me that he was descending to the first floor to start the game. Inward, my stomach was churning, hoping that this was all just an elaborate hoax still. I needed it to be okay. I needed what we experienced to make sense. The numbers flickered from 6, then 2, then 4, and then I saw it linger on 5, and my heart raced faster. Instantly, I pressed for the elevator to come to the 7th floor. But instead, the lights flickered for a moment, and it jumped to the 8th. I didn't waste another moment. I was racing to the emergency stairs to make it and meet the elevator. I arrived just as the doors opened, and my heart sank. It was empty. I must have spent at least half an hour running from room to room, banging on doors and frantically calling out to my brother, and then eventually one of the guests called downstairs and complained to Dad. His face was one of disappointment and confusion as I tried to explain what had happened. And then he called the police. "No ghost got your brother. They probably just have a pedophile in the building," he growled bitterly. It took the cops less than an hour to show up. They got a warrant, and they started searching from the top to the bottom for any signs of Will. Dad told me to stay in the lobby or in our room, and I knew he was mad at me. Why wouldn't he be? It was supposed to be my job to keep him safe. And yet, instead, I had literally encouraged this fantasy, thinking that it would all make sense in the end. But now our whole world was falling apart. Nothing made sense. Will was gone. A few days went by, and despite my father's efforts to keep up the search, the police labeled my brother as a missing person and forgot about him. I didn't blame them, of course. I knew that they were doing the best they could under the circumstances. They checked the security feeds, they made sure not a single guest left the hotel within a 48-hour period. Every bag, every room, every nook and cranny had been explored. What else was there to do? I knew the answer, of course. Even if I didn't want to say it. The hidden rules, they lingered in my mind throughout the entire ordeal. Somehow Will had been right. He managed to cross over to wherever. Meaning the only way for me to find him would be to cross over too. It took me a whole day to work up the courage. I wanted to wait until Dad was sound asleep, and then, with a briefcase in tow, I started towards the elevator. This time I resolved that I was going to follow the note explicitly. I pressed the button and I took a few calming breaths, trying to convince myself this harebrained scheme was going to work. As the elevator rode down to the first floor, I placed the briefcase down and reviewed the note again. 6, 2, 4, 3, 6. Then the elevator would take me to the second floor as my final destination. I paced the lobby for a moment, my palms sweaty. I knew it wasn't a hoax anymore. I knew what I was walking into. But my brother needed me. So I stepped inside and I pressed the first button. Slowly, the elevator doors creaked closed. The next few moments were tense. I thought I could hear my heart beating faster as we reached floor 4, then 5, and finally 6. As the doors opened, my face felt flush, and I was sweaty. I had to keep going. I pressed down for the second floor, and then the 4th, and then the 3rd. Nothing had happened so far. Maybe nothing would. I had almost convinced myself that Will's disappearance was still in the realm of factual evidence, when the elevator began to move itself towards the 5th floor on its own. I tensed up, recalling the warning about the mysterious woman the note said to never interact with. As the doors opened, I expected the worst, but I was only greeted with that same eerie quiet. The doors lingered open for a second, and I reached down to open the briefcase. I was almost there. Now I needed to follow the strange ritual with the mirror. I pressed the 6th floor, and I waited as the elevator shimmied up. I took a few slow, steady breaths, then stepped out to the hall on floor 6. The elevator doors stayed open. I took the mirror in my hand and slowly raised it to my eye level, just enough where I could see the empty box. And that's when I saw her. She was standing there, in the reflection of the mirror, just standing, waiting in the elevator. Without so much as a flinching motion, she wore this long white nightgown that went to her ankles, and had dark matted hair covering her eyes and pale face. But there was no doubt in my mind, this surely had to be the woman that I had been warned about. I took a few steady breaths again, my heart pounding even louder as I walked slowly down the hall with the mirror facing the elevator. The woman didn't move. It was like she was waiting for me to return. Finally, I reached the end of the hall, my palms sweaty as I struggled not to look at her. Then I began to walk backwards. Why was she just waiting? What did she want? I couldn't hear anything in those halls, not even my own footsteps. The air felt tense. I was almost there. She still hadn't moved at all. Was she smiling now? Out of the corner of my eye, it seemed like she was, but I couldn't be sure. I didn't want to risk even bringing my eyes close to hers. I didn't know what this woman was capable of. All I knew was that she was dangerous, and she was evil. And finally I made it to the elevator. I kept the mirror near to my eyes where I could see that she was standing just behind me at neck level. It was a smirk. I was sure of it. I lowered the mirror down, thinking that maybe this was just a trick of the light. Maybe without the mirror, I would return to the normal world, so I tentatively reached my hand forward to press the next button. Then her pale fingers moved past mine in a flash, and the woman pressed it for me. Our skin nearly touched, and I instantly looked towards the floor, not daring to make a move. The elevator shimmied again as we rode down to floor 5, and the doors opened once more. I got the sense she wanted to leave the elevator, so I scooted to the left and kept my eyes down, watching her bare feet shuffle out of the box. And then, at last, she was gone. The doors closed and I felt a sigh of relief, and I pushed for the second floor. Finally, this ordeal was over, I thought. But I was just getting ahead of myself, sadly. For as the doors opened to the second floor, I found myself immediately put off by the way the floor was set up. There were no doors, you see. Not like the regular setup where they were all in a row. Instead, it was just blank wall, with no indication of a guest room at all. I considered waiting and riding back to the first floor, but Will was somewhere amidst this maze, I realized. So I stepped out, and I began to explore. For those of you guys that like to listen to stories, which I assume is all of you since, you're here, Chilling is currently introducing Chilling 2.0, which brings in a bunch of new features and a fresh new look. Most importantly, Chilling is now free. All you guys out there who are like, hey, I don't want to sign up for a subscription, why don't they make Chilling free? Well, they did. They listened to you. Isn't that great? It's an app that actually listened to you because it's what you wanted. Now, they do that. There's new content including full-length novels, podcasts, more, new features including creator profiles, the ability to follow your favorite narrators, like me, and authors. There's some video content that should be showing up soon, if not started already. So once again, like I said, start listening free today. There's links in the description down below if you guys can check that out. And if not, then hey, you're the one who's missing out. Once again, that's the Chilling app. A big thank you to Jordan Alexander Sanchez, Jakob Fenske, Stephanie Butler, Jordan Humble, Chance Burnett, Diana Kraus, BrimstonePandemonium, Caltuna, William Wellington, Emma, Brenna Crow, LaQueda Canizales, Smiley the Psychotic, Dante, Kinkade, SimbasBloodyMojo, Mephistopheles, CursepoxPrimarch, Bastion Beefcake, M, Jesus Cornejo, Yarghoul, Clownible, Amber Clark, Jay Kierns, Dakota Lane Whetstone, Himbo Jerry, Crusader Chocobo, Adamarius, Estebean, Nate Cull, Our Minsect Time, Xylobones, Angelus, Seclude, Salty Surprise, Levita Galvin, That Creepy Chick, Red Shadow Cat, Turtleman, Carolinian, Mr. Marcus Blitz, Ika Limchalk, Dirty Diver 030, Matt Bach, Voice of Sand, Picamel, Melted Lake, Tali Sue, William King, Darth Miver, Sashi Suzaku, Croconut 509, Stricket, Freddy Krueger, Lisa Cottrell, Hades Nephew, Acid System, Mog, Kiwi the Sloth, Fester's Lampshade, Nico Kyle, The Ginger Bros, Aaron Stormcrow, Daniel Polson, and Corey Kenshin. To all of you guys, I cannot thank you enough. Thank you for being a huge support to me. Thank you to everybody who's in the description down below, and thank you to everyone who can even support $1 just on Patreon to help keep the content coming.